and gentlemen, it is February 18, 2019, and this is FAWMtalk. Of course, Juha, and with me, as always, getting a hang of his new internet, Mr. T.C. Elliott. How are you doing?
I'm struggling, but I'm doing okay. Oh, how are you doing today, Juha?
Not too bad. It's going all right. But of course, we have a special guest here today, hailing from UK, I believe, Mr. Headfirstonly. Chris, how are you doing?
That well, eh?
Chris? Well,
good evening.
There we go.
Good morning, even.
It was a little bit of a hitch there, huh?
Yeah, I'm not sure what happened there, but
All right. Well, everything's
good to be
good.
back in the room.
Yeah. All right. Perfect. So, what's going on?
Well, I've just put up my entry for the semi-final of the Badass Riff contest.
Oh, fabulous.
So, yeah, I've gone old school this time. I've done the prog, so it's old school this time.
So you got through the first round.
Yeah, I really, given the quality of the riffs I was up against, I am really surprised I've got this far. Really quite humbled.
Well, don't sell yourself short.
Been having huge fun.
Yeah.
Been having huge fun with it.
Awesome. We have a track here provided by Chris here, and he wanted us to play this one. So let's get right to it. And this one is by Mel Siriaco, and the track is called Flushed.
Didn't know that I could feel this way. Didn't know that I could be so happy. In your arms forever I will stay. You're my first flush, first rush, first love. You're all I'm thinking of. You're the piece I never thought was missing. And I've left my phone left behind to share our dream with you. 'Cause maybe wishes do come true. I can't wait for the rest of my life with you. I can't wait for the rest of my life with you. I can't wait for the rest of my life with you. I can't wait for the rest of my life with you. Oh, oh, oh. I can't wait for the rest of my life. I can't wait for the rest of my life. I can't wait for the rest of my life. I can't wait for the rest of my life. I can't wait for the rest of my life. I can't wait for the rest of my life. I can't wait for the rest of my life. I can't wait for the rest of my life with you.
Well, well, look what we have here. Our escapee and a traitor. Guess we're gonna have that blood sacrifice after all.
Let go of me! Jonah! Jonah! Leave her alone!
Never trusted a bastard outsider. This is what we do to traitors. Kill them both. We got 2 sacrifices this morning.
Shadow, old friend, please. Let me deal with Fiona. She is my responsibility. I should have been tougher on her.
Father, please, don't let them do this. I love him. I love Wazir.
I love you too, Fiona. Tell you what, old friend. You can choose one. Only one.
You know who I'm going to choose, Shadow.
That's General Shadow. And don't you forget.
No, please, don't do this, please.
In the name of the Death God, I commit this blood to the soil. May the land be ever fruitful, so that we may continue living under his red eye. I love you, Fiona. I love you. Remember us. Remember me. I love...
Flushed by Mel Siriaco. A very interesting, very surprisingly well-produced track. I was... When I heard this the first time, it was a bit of a shock. And kind of gives me, like, the... I'm starting to feel like, should I post anything now that I hear people posting stuff that is this well-produced? It is really fantastic stuff, and really kind of a progressive piece, and I would expect nothing less from you, Christian. And there was kind of a hip-hop elements to it, and orchestral elements, and kind of a musical track. Very, very interesting.
Yeah, Mel's been knocking it out of the park this year. We started Form the same year thanks to the same thing.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we used to belong to a message board devoted to the writing William Gibson.
All right.
Basically, a friend of ours in Australia back in 2009 posted a link to Form and just said, "Hey guys, I think you two both do music. You should try this." So I think we signed up within about a week of each other.
Wow. What year was that?
That was 2009.
Oh, wow.
Because Mel used to be on Form as Palidust.
Yeah.
But
That's a
yeah,
little bit before
just-
my time. TC, didn't you say that you signed up 2009 as well?
I started in 08 was my first year.
All right, yeah.
Yeah.
So, Chris, we were talking about, and we have always been talking a lot about progressive music in the Slack chat, and all around FAWM. So I was kind of interested. My first, the way I got into progressive music is my dad was really huge fan of Jethro Tull, and especially the earlier albums like This Was and what are some of the other? I'm kind of blanking out on the.
Aqualung, Thick as a Brick.
You think it's a brick, definitely. I don't know if he. I think
Yeah.
Aqualung was maybe one of those, but he had all the albums, and I kind of started to get more interested in the Songs in the Woods and Heavy Horses, Passion Play, that sort of stuff. But he also liked Pink Floyd, the Syd Barrett stuff, and I don't know, Hard Mother, Piper.
Atom Heart Mother, yeah.
And I kind of like the more was I think considered like classic Pink Floyd, The Wall, Dark Side of the Moon, Metal. That was a great one in my opinion. And but he kind of likes the more simple stuff and like almost bluesy stuff. I mean, Jethro Tull, they did like very bluesy stuff, their earlier albums. But then I really got into Dream Theater, and we had a bit of a discussion about Dream Theater in the chat room.
Yes, we did.
But how did you originally get into progressive music? I mean, did somebody introduce it to you, or was it more like more of an organic procedure?
Well, as a kid, I grew up in the Midlands, in a town called Stafford, which was a bit north of the Black Country, but our local town band, if you like, was a band called Black Sabbath.
Oh, right.
So that music was just part of the fabric of going to school. All my friends would, this was back in the early 70s, and really kids judged each other about how cool they were by what albums they would be wandering around with under their arms at playtime in the school. and it was always because back in the days of LPs, the sleeve really mattered. So, somebody would come in with Echoes or Metal under their arm, and we'd be going, "What is that? Is that an ear?"
That is really interesting. I mean,
My father was into classical music. He just had no interest in popular music at all. So I was only really introduced to records and popular music going around to friends' house. And I can still remember the experience that turned me on to prog rock was one of my friends called Clive basically sat me down in his chair, put a set of headphones on, and played me Led Zeppelin's Whole Lot of Love. And I'd never heard a record in stereo before that point, and I just, the experience completely changed me. I've never been the same since.
that is so interesting, and it's really interesting, like how you describe kids walking around with LP albums. That it's I don't know. It sounds like a really awesome school, but nobody in our school was like that into music. I guess.
No, I mean that was the thing back then. There really wasn't cassette tapes or tape swapping or anything like that.
Right.
So the only way, you sort of found out about things was, your friends would have found a new album by Gong or Bebop Deluxe or Queen or anything like that, and would come in and say, "Oh, I found this band, they're really good." And we'd lend each other LPs and listen to them.
Right.
So everybody's tastes really started to coalesce, and there'd be different tribes. So you'd have, the rock guys who liked Pink Floyd, and you'd have the mods who liked R&B, like The Who, and you'd have the sort of confused kids like me who'd be into Emerson, Lake and Palmer and all the weird stuff.
Very confused. That is very interesting. I've always considered, or I've somehow levitated towards British music instead of American music. I mean, those are the two big things. Of course, there's a lot of good things come from Australia, but I think when I was growing up, it was a lot of American music, a lot of British music around that. Like kids were listening, and like older kids were listening to a lot of Metallica, some American things like what's a good example? Pantera. Is that how do you pronounce that name? I've never said that aloud.
Pantera.
Yeah, Pantera.
Pantera. That's weird.
Pantera.
Pantera. Sounds like some sort of Tolkien. Anyway. But yeah, somehow, like, whenever I started to listen to, back in the CD days when I was listening to CD music, I always put on something British, and it was never, I had albums by American bands, but I never really listened to them, because they have such a different tonality to them, songwriting-wise even, and it's, I don't know why, it's somehow American music feels kind of more arrogant, or there's some sort of quality to it that kind of puts me off a little bit. But British music, especially my first love really was Iron Maiden, and I had like probably 100 different records by them at some point.
Wow.
And yeah, I really like them, but like going from there, like Pink Floyd, Jethro Tull, Led Zeppelin, all these great British bands, and I don't know what it is, but it's something going on that weird island. They produce just fantastic sounding stuff.
But I think one of the big differences with British and American bands of that sort of era was just their backgrounds. So I mean, going back to Black Sabbath, the guys all worked in a metal pressing factory. They were really working class, whereas you've got, well, I mean, Metallica were basically kids growing up in the San Francisco area, and they all worshipped bands like Motorhead and UFO and the British metal scene of the late 70s and the early 80s, and then you got the new wave of British heavy metal that Iron Maiden led. I mean, I saw Maiden when they had Paul Di'Anno singing for them. Saw Bruce Dickinson when he was the singer in Samson, supporting Def Leppard at the Lyceum, and that must have been, what, 80, 81?
Yeah.
It's scary how long ago it is these days.
That's really interesting. I mean, Paul Di'Anno, fantastic voice, really, but I don't know.
Yeah.
It's somehow, when you compare him to Bruce, it's kind of scary how much more powerful he comes off compared to Di'Anno and Blaze Bayley later. I mean, he's a great, I don't know, great vocalist, but he was like doing all right for himself, and people just hated him. I don't know why the hate.
Didn't he end up in Michael Schenker's Temple of Rock, or am I thinking of somebody else?
You know what? I don't think I've heard about that.
Okay.
But yeah, I've seen like videos where he was gigging with Maiden and people were like throwing bottles at him, and they were like stopping songs, and he would just yell at the audiences, and it's a weird time.
But isn't this like we were talking earlier on the Slack chat about how you the first iteration of a band that you discover, that's the lineup that will be that band for you.
Yeah, I know
and
what
if
you
somebody
mean.
changes it, it's like, yeah, this is a crime against nature. This isn't what I wanted this band, my favorite band, to be.
Yeah, it's so weird. We had a lieutenant in the army when I was in the reserve officer school. There was a lieutenant there who really liked Iron Maiden, but he said that when they started using synthesizers, that ruined the whole band, and he's never listened to anything past that point, which is weird to me because I kind of consider their better stuff started to emerge from that point on. But then I started listening to that stuff when I think X Factor came out, so it's, yeah, I guess you like what you grew up with.
Yeah, I had friends who just would not buy a record if it had synthesizers on it because that wasn't metal.
It's so weird. I mean, TC doesn't have a horse in this race. He's kind of only now getting into metal music, right?
I find it interesting when you talk about progressive music and metal. What is metal? And like, I don't consider Motorhead metal. I love Motorhead, but it's closer to punk rock than metal to me. And punk rock with metal guitars, I guess, the tone. Led Zeppelin, I've never considered a progressive band, but I completely see why that statement would be said. I love Led Zeppelin, but I never really got into metal, pure metal. Lots of friends in high school. So I was in high school in the mid to late 80s. And so you had a pretty sweet spot as far as guitar players. A lot of hair metal stuff was getting played, stuff like that. But so I'd be riding around with a friend, and they'd have a mixtape or a tape would come on, and there would be some awesome songs, and to this day I have no idea what it was that I loved so much, because once I got out of the car, it was gone. I'm like, what was that again? And it was too late. And I've heard a song here and a song there, a lot of stuff that I absolutely loved, and I have no idea who it is. I have from growing up. But I'm definitely more of the classic. In high school, I was more of the classic rock guy. I liked Tull in high school. That was, but it was still, it was after their heyday. So it was, like I had original masters, and then I was just getting into the deeper cuts. And I would play the popular stuff. Like, I remember being a dishwasher in a steak house, and I was listening to Jethro Tull, just the popular stuff, the stuff everybody, that you'd hear on the radio every once in a while, and people were looking at me like, "What are you listening to?" I was the weird one, and I'm huge. Jimi Hendrix is my all-time favorite artist, and definitely guitar oriented, but pure metal, it's. I like really hard rock butting up to metal, but when it gets into metal, I haven't taken the time to really learn and have a really good appreciation for it.
Yeah.
That being said, I know Yuha will link stuff and say, "Oh, this is what I like," and I'll go and listen YouTube or whatever through the Slack chat, and I almost always find something that I like. But I still don't buy classic metal albums. I don't know why. It's just probably something that would benefit me to get into. I think part of it is just because I know I'll never be able to play that music guitar wise, just the skill and the
Well, that's interesting, because I was going to ask both of you, because you guys are both guitarists. So do you find that playing guitar has actually shaped your taste in music, or changed your taste in music since you started learning?
Yeah, definitely. I
Yeah?
remember it was I think the fall of 91. I was just moved to, or it was probably the spring of 92, summer. I just moved to this town. It's Columbia, in middle of Missouri. There, I went to university here, and I had CD after I had a pretty good sized CD collection. It was a couple of hundred CDs in a cabinet that was in the kitchen of this little bitty apartment that I could barely afford. It was where all your food was supposed to go, but I'd never had food, so I had all my CDs in there. And some friends came up from back home, which is about 100 miles south of here, and they came in and they were like, "Oh, you don't have any music?" I'm like, "Oh yeah." So I opened it up and they go looking through it, and I remember the comment. I can't remember which one of my friends said it. One of the girls from back home. She goes, "Boy, you really like guitar." And you could go through, and everything was guitar oriented. And I never. It was only to that point that I realized I didn't really like piano based music that well. And that's not true. I liked it, but it wasn't what I collected and what I listened to. And since then, I've really made it a point to buy and listen to things I like that's not guitar oriented. But I mean, even things like I remember going through my Simon and Garfunkel stage and Paul Simon, but even that, it's really guitar based, all the way up. I like Jim Croce and stuff my mother turned me on to. My father liked the Holy Modal Rounders, and I love the Holy Modal Rounders, and it's like bluegrass music played old-timey music, but with a punk attitude. It's not punk music at all, but it's got kind of that. It's okay if it's a little bit out of time as long as it's fun, and I just love that music all the way up to, like I said, Jimmy is huge. I was big into blues in the early 90s. I have a huge blues collection.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, so I really, and honestly, it was classic rock and blues, Jimmy, and I got into Stevie Ray Vaughan, and that really led me into Albert King. And I remember when I got my first Muddy Waters, it was like the best of or whatever, and I listened to that. I mean, if you could burn a hole through the CD player, I think that's the one CD. I still have that same CD, and I've gotten a lot more stuff, but I got into a lot of stuff, but it was all through Guitar Hero, guitar magazines turning me on to stuff. That's really where even to this day, we have talked on a previous episode of FAWMtalk about getting into electronic music on FAWM and stuff, and I really feel like I'm still just a newbie listening to that. I know what I like, but I can't tell you much about it because I haven't been immersed into it too much, and I don't have a disdain for synthesizers at all by any stretch. I think it's great what can be done, but if you listen to, and now I've got like, I don't know, 1,400 CDs plus all the downloaded music. I still have all this music, and very little of it is that side of it. So
I see on the chat that both Sapient and Ryako are saying we need to make TC a mixtape. We need to educate you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Give you a list of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Yuha is huge about Spotify playlist. It's so easy to do. You just put a playlist together and go, hey, listen to this, and I'm all for it. I'm all for it. If when I have somebody that I like and respect, and other farmers are good about that, when they recommend stuff, I almost always like or appreciate what they've shared. And everybody's taste is different. You're not going to be 100%, but it is amazing if somebody says, hey, you need to dig this. When I go to listen to that, I can say, oh, I can see why this was recommended. I can see this good part. I'm all for whether it's a real mixtape in the mail, which I still have a cassette player, so I don't know if that's normal any day anymore, or if it's a playlist, or if it's a something. One of the other farmers he does a best of, and he'll actually download like even popular music from the year before, and he'll share it. And I don't listen to pop music hardly at all, so every year I try to check that out and listen through and say, okay, what did he hear? What does he recommend? And I go check that out because he's an awesome Falmer. It's Evan Wolverton, and
Yeah.
I absolutely love him as an artist and his music sense and everything. And he listens to this pop music, and I'm like, just don't get exposed to it. So I go and listen, and sometimes I'm like, okay, it's a pop song. I don't understand what he saw in this song, but most of the time I'm like, oh, this is pretty cool, or I can see why somebody would listen to this song as opposed to something else that was on Top 40 radio or what have you. So yeah,
because Top 40 will not expose you to the interesting stuff.
No,
we got spoilt in the UK. There used to be a TV show that I grew up with, and again, this is another thing that drove my interest in prog rock. There was a TV show on the BBC that used to go out at like midnight, and you'd stay up secretly and watch it on the TV. Called the Old Grey Whistle Test.
Oh yeah.
with Bob Harris, and I mean, like, 1 week they had the Dutch band Focus on Ties van Leer, and they played one of the tracks off Moving Waves, and it's the one where yodeling is involved.
Yeah. Hocus Pocus.
And the power of that show. That week, every pressing plant in London had to be turned over to press copies of Moving Waves by Focus to meet the demand. I think they sold 75,000 copies in a week, just on the strength of that appearance on the Old Grey Whistle Test.
That is insane.
And they'd have amazing bands on. They'd have, the Edgar Winter Group playing Frankenstein, and the guitarist is Ronnie Montrose. Or you'd have the sensational Alex Harvey band, or Bowie, or Mark Bolan. They'd all make appearances on there. It's just extraordinary being exposed to this and seeing it being done live on the television in front of you. I know MTV doesn't really do music anymore, but back then the impact of having just an hour and a half every week that exposed you to stuff that wasn't in the top 30. It was a revelation.
Yeah, in Finland they have this station that's like government run or funded. That's called it's like public radio or something like that. So they have a really wide range of programming, and they have both radio shows and TV shows. But what they do and what they have done for the longest time, they play like classical music, they play all sorts of weird stuff. And there's this host that's been there since the Finnish viewers rule. no, this name is called, it was a show called, or channel called Radio Mafia. And after that, it's changed to Yle X, which is like Public X kind of a channel. And they played programming like, there was one guy called Jukka Mikkola who still does this stuff, but he's been doing it since probably 80s or 70s. And he's got this show called, well, in English it's like Space Junk. And he plays the weirdest tracks, stuff that I consider weird, and it's just, some of them are just like noise, but he plays, it comes on during the night, so it starts like midnight or whatever, and it plays like 3 hours of just the weirdest stuff, and that's on like the public radio, but. Yeah, I've listened to that stuff sometimes, and my dad, of course, loves that because he loves everything that's interesting in any way. But what
does the show stream on the internet?
Yes, probably. I don't know if it's available to people outside Finland, though.
That's exactly the sort of thing I'd love to give a listen to. So
we'll have to get.
I might have to investigate that.
Yeah, absolutely. But what you asked earlier about the guitar stuff that has, what was the question? It was like, has guitar influenced?
Has playing guitar changed what sort of music
Yeah,
you
yeah.
respond to,
Yeah, that's a really
or your taste?
that's a really interesting question because I was thinking about something relating to that today, and it absolutely has. When I heard Iron Maiden the first time, I had never considered playing guitar, but I had to just start playing guitar immediately when I heard that band, and I didn't listen to anything else except Iron Maiden for like 4 years. I just collected
Wow.
everything they released, and I just listened to that band. And I was probably driving everyone around me kind of crazy, but I just had Iron Maiden T-shirts, Iron Maiden flags on the walls, Iron Maiden like everything, and I played Iron Maiden songs on guitar. But then, of course, when I got interested in Dream Theater and that sort of stuff, I started to get more focused on playing this sort of progressive stuff on drums and later with guitar. But I was never a very good guitar player when I was growing up, so I didn't feel like I could play anything of the sort. Like when John Petrucci does a solo, that's something else, man. But when I think in my 20s, I finally discovered how you learn how to play even the most difficult stuff. And I think that really changed the way I hear music. Because I kind of idolized all these very technical players like Petrucci and even Maiden's guitarists, Adrian Smith and Dave Murray. They're like they do great solos. Andy McKee, and later on Guthrie Govan, who's phenomenal, probably the best guitarist I've ever heard, like technically.
He's
And
an absolute monster.
Yeah.
He really is. TC, if you've never heard Guthrie's stuff, you need to check him out.
he's
Either
insane.
his solo album or with his band, The Aristocrats.
Yeah, and he's one of those guys. Like he can't play anything, and he's got this weird video online where he just imitates other guitarists like Jimi Hendrix, Edge. There's like 20, 30 different guitarists, and he plays stuff in their styles, and it's fascinating. But when I learned how to play pretty much anything on guitar, or rather, I started to feel like I could learn anything I wanted. If I put the time in, I could learn this. It really started to change how I view music. Because I was idolizing these people. I was idolizing, most of all, John Petrucci, because, I don't know, something about his style of playing just... I just like that. But when I discovered, and I've learned a couple of Dream Theater songs back in like few years ago, and it started to I started to get kind of bored of that music. I don't know what it is, but when I learned that I can do the same thing as these guys, like part of the magic is gone. It's like
I was just going to say,
Yeah,
has that
it's not-
killed the magic for you?
yeah, absolutely. It's you're part of
That's
why
really
I
interesting.
why I was listening to the music is, of course, because I was so fascinated by how insanely talented musicians these guys are. So anytime I would listen to a new song, I would like try to keep an ear on where the really difficult parts are, and then go through them like, wow, how did they play those? But when I figured out, oh, this is how they play them, and if I practice enough, I can play the same thing. So it kind of like it lost, yeah, like I said, it lost the magic. Like I haven't listened to probably the last 3 Dream Theater albums. I mean, I always listen through them, but I don't get anything out of them. It's
Yeah.
it's weird. So
There is, I mean, I understand that idea of figuring out something, and it's like, oh, well, I see the man behind the curtain now. I see how this is done. There was one guy who, I mean, the first time I heard him was back in the 70s, playing guitar on an album by Bruford, and everything he did subsequently, I'd just sit and listen to it and go, yeah, this could be from outer space. I have no idea what's going on here. And that was a guitarist called Alan Holdsworth.
Huh.
You know him, TC?
A little. I've listened a little bit, but the reputation is huge.
Yeah, he was just on a completely different level to any other guitarist I've ever seen. Sadly, he's no longer with us, but yeah, he left an amazing legacy.
Yeah, there's so many great guitarists like Sean Lane. And I gotta get back to Guthrie because he's different in a way that, look, there are a lot of technical players, but with a lot of them you get the sense that they're just kind of like playing what they have learned, and they're just like repeating stuff. So, but with Guthrie, you get a sense that he's playing what he feels fits the music. And he's building, like, even his album. I love the album and I love all the arrangements on the album. But when he plays those songs live, it's always a different experience. He doesn't do the same solos. He just like completely different solos, and they make those songs sound just different. It's an experience when you hear him play, and even when he's doing something stupid, it's always like he's got such a musicality to his performance and the way he thinks about music, and it's almost like he's talking with the guitar. It's very strange.
There's a place that Downburst and I visited in Bath last summer, which is a rare guitar shop. And the guitar tech in there actually knows Guthrie. And he says basically he's just a natural player. And he said he's been at parties where Guthrie had quite a few beers and was on the floor, but was still playing fantastic guitar, even though he couldn't stand up. But it was just, I'm here to play guitar and I'm going to play guitar. So that's what he does.
It's strange, and technically, he just trumps everyone.
Yeah.
When you listen to him...
Wait, he plays fretless guitar, for goodness sake.
And even, like, speed-wise, you listen to one of his solos, he's playing, like, the same sort of... And when you start to get bored of that stuff, like, this is just too much of the same, then he speeds up, starts playing faster. It's so strange. That guy is... Yeah, if you told me he wasn't human, I would believe you. Well, anyway, let's...
Awesome.
Shall we listen to another song?
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, let's go to another one. This one is by Postcard Helicopters. The song is called Do You Need?
Standing on the lawn, waiting for a call. Sun is on the rise. We'll be on a flight on the way out tomorrow. Only one way. Going on a travel, nothing left to say. Do you need more than I can offer? We'll find a way, drive out all the sorrow. Do you need more than I can offer? Time is our enemy. Turn back and recover. There is an intention hidden nonetheless, throwing out distraction, dialing up distress. Could it be more simple, obvious yet unseen? Marionetted fingers work behind the scenes. Do you need more than I can offer? We find a way, drive out all the sorrow. Do you need more than I can offer? Time is our enemy. Turn back and recover. Do you need? Do you need? Do turn back and recover?
Do You Need by Postcard Helicopters. There's something very... I was thinking about Mike Oldfield when I was listening to that. It's something quite similar to it. But very interesting arrangement, especially the chorus with that almost flute-like synthesizer sound underneath it.
Yeah, some Postcard Helicopters always uses lovely synth sounds.
Yeah,
I really like his stuff.
that was great.
Yeah, there's a sweetness to the sounds he comes up with or uses that's it feels complete. I can't really describe it, but it just feels like the arrangement, the sound of the song, it just feels whole, if that makes sense. Where sometimes I like jarring, but with that sound, it was really cool.
Yeah, it's like every sound he uses builds the whole,
Yeah.
and that's one of the things you need to, when considering arrangement, it should be that you don't use like excessively instruments that utilize the same sonic space. So in that sense, it's using all the instruments very appropriately, so that they have their own space and they support the whole. Great job.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a
That-
good one.
Could just drift away on that string pad, you know.
Yeah.
That really, really harks back to the 1980s, that does. Good old-fashioned analog synths. Sound great.
Yeah. I don't know what's... Like I said, Mike Oldfield, I really felt that. I can't think of any of his songs right now. Only Sailing, but that's kind of a more jolly one.
Or
Anyway.
On Horseback, or 5 Miles Out, or...
Yeah. Sort of
Yeah,
stuff.
I've always been a huge Mike Oldfield nut.
Yeah, it's a good one, though. Tim Fatchen is always... he's probably compared like 20 of my songs to Mike Oldfield. I don't know. I had never listened to it, but he kept comparing all of my songs to Mike Oldfield, so I finally had to start listening to his stuff. This is one of those things. But he does very long songs, which is... I don't... These days I listen to longer songs a little bit less, because I want to get through more songs. Typically, every week I save like 2,000 songs or something like that, and I try to like sample a lot of different releases that come that are released the previous week, and so you get stuck on longer songs. And it's a shame. There are good longer songs, but I don't. Even the ones that I like, I find that I listen to them less these days. Especially like Pink Floyd, they have fantastic, very long songs, but I don't listen to them like barely ever.
I seem to remember you writing a 24-minute epic one year on Form.
The 46-minute satellite one year on.
Well, yeah.
I think, was it 24 or 28 minutes? I can't remember. The other one?
Yeah, I think it was 28.
Yeah, I think 28. I think Chris shortchanged you a little bit there.
Well, what's 4 minutes?
Longer than the average FAWM song. That's what 4 minutes is.
Yeah, that's about 3.5 Ramones singles, isn't it?
Right. At least 2, yeah.
Anyway, yeah, but I like them. I appreciate them, and I like making longer songs because they give you a different sort of experience. It's like
well, it gives you the space to take an idea and just let it sort of mull and marinate, rather than saying, I've got 2 minutes 50 seconds to get this done. You know, what am I going to cut out? What am I going to have to lose to make it fit?
Yeah.
You know, it's like, let's throw in the 13th guitar solo and a synthesizer break and
that's good.
cello solo.
That's good, isn't it?
I remember back in 09 or maybe 10 when Mal had actually I gave him a sent him a lyric, and he used a very 4 lines and made a song called Two Hearts. And the intro, it's electronic based but really organic sounding, and it goes through and it goes around 4 times, and you hear real subtle changes through it. And I was talking to my wife, I was like, listen to this is awesome. And the second time around, she's like, is he going to get to it? Is he going to sing? I mean, why? I'm like, no, listen, it changed. Or that sounded exactly the same to me. No, it was, and after 2 minutes and we hadn't got to the meat of the song yet, she was like, you got anything else? I'm like, yeah, never mind. I'll play you the country folk stuff that you like, a little later. I'm going to listen to this song again because it was awesome. And when you can take the time and get that subtle stuff that changes the mood of the piece or goes in a different direction, then brings it back. I mean, to me, it's a modern version of a lot of the classical music that I studied, where you've got a theme and variation, and you have a sonata where you have it 3 parts, and it can be 12 minutes or 20 minutes long, and you're getting a complete thought, and then it's followed by another complete thought, and it works together well. And that thought's not a simple thought. It's very well explored, and it's nuanced, and I think that works whether it's progressive music or whether it's metal or whether it's classical.
That's interesting. I'm thinking about, because I've had problems with, because let's talk a little bit more about Dream Theater. They have a longer tracks, and one of the what they call one track is 6 degrees of inner turbulence.
Yeah, I've got that album.
Yeah, but when I listen to it, I don't get one track. I can listen to it from the beginning to the end, and it's 40 something minutes long. But I don't. To me, it doesn't sound like a one track. It sounds like 8 different tracks, and to me, it feels kind of like they wrote the tracks and then they mashed them together and maybe wrote an overture or some things that kind of bridge the different sections together. But they also have this wonderful piece called A Change of Seasons, which in turn, in my opinion, it flows a lot better, and it's more like a complete experience when you listen to it. So it's strange, like with the track you were talking about earlier, the 28-minute History of Clouds that I wrote, 2014. I just picked up guitar, put the click on, and started to play stuff. And I started from somewhere, and I played until I had like 28 minutes, and then I started building the other things around that. And I think that's how you get like more of a complete thought. And I felt like it was a one continuous piece. But when you have different songs, kind of like different songs, and you just mash them together, I don't know, it kind of rubs me the wrong way. It's like the wrong way to do it. Oh, what do you think?
I think the Dream Theater, that album you mentioned, it's very much been written so that chunks can be taken out of that long piece, and given airplay as a thing. But if we go back to Mike Oldfield, I mean, if you listen to Omadorn, which was his third album, and that is just transcendently beautiful.
Yeah,
I still think it's one of the best contemporary albums ever recorded. It's 2 tracks, and they are 2 pieces that are symphonic in structure. You know, it is a thing that has a start and it flows through to the end.
You
and
can't,
even Tubular Bells, really, as well.
yeah, you can't really like take a piece of it and listen to it as a individual thing.
So I think there is and I would guess it's that someone like Dream Theater, when they put their stuff together, they have an eye on airplay, whereas Mike Oldfield was just, you know, given the roam of the Manor recording studio in Oxfordshire, and basically when the bands who had paid to use the Manor packed up and went home for the evening, Mike would just go in with his stuff and get his tapes on, and would just end up recording, you know, everything himself. And that, do everything yourself, do the bass, the drums, the guitar, the vocals, the mandolin, the tubular bells, whatever else, you know, that's kind of why I've got all this stuff in the room I'm in at the moment, because, you know, he's my role model. He always has been.
Yeah. So you kind of have this gear acquisition syndrome going on full blow.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Does it show any signs of declining or?
Well, every time I buy another guitar, I always say, okay, yeah, that's it, I'm done now.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, I mean, like TC was saying about the bass, I mean, this thing, I've been obsessed with for the best part of 30 years. Which is the Chapman stick. So it just has an utterly distinctive sound that is unlike anything else that I heard. The first time I heard one was on, I think it was probably a Peter Gabriel album.
Oh yeah, yeah. I saw one in I think Tony Levin was using one on the Liquid Tension Experiment album.
Yeah. And yeah, Tony, like Mike, Tony has been a huge inspiration for me in my bass playing and stick playing, and he's a really nice guy as well.
Oh yeah, that's always a bonus, yeah.
But he's played with everybody. I mean, his CV is insane. You know, he's played for Pink Floyd, He's played for John Lennon.
Yeah.
You know, he's just one of the go-to guys when you want a particular bass sound. It's like, who should we get? Oh, let's get Tony Levitt.
Tony's probably free.
He's a busy lad these days.
Yeah, I bet. Oh, I bet. Let's get some more music. Let's not do another 24 minute, 45 minute stretch. Let's go to another one because we have music, and these are good ones too. All right. So here's one by Dan Hilton, and this song is called "When You're Away."
I don't sleep in anymore when you're away. Just fixing my breakfast at your when you're away. I stop looking after my health. I don't know what to do with myself when you're away. When you're away. When you're away. When you're away. Enjoy yourself. Come back to me safely. I must confess that I miss you both, that I miss you greatly. Enjoy yourself. Come back to me safely. I must confess that I miss you both, that I miss you greatly. Enjoy yourself, come back to me safely.
"When You're Away" by Dan Hilton, also known as Short Dan. I don't know, whenever I hear
that.
organ music like that, it reminds me of Procol Harum. How do you pronounce his name? I'm also asking
Procol
about
Harum?
Procol Harum. I'm also asking about pronunciations. I don't know this stuff. Yeah, but that sort of mellow, like long, full notes. It just always takes me back to his stuff.
Lovely swing to that one as well.
Oh yeah, that was that like a 303 or something?
Say what?
Drum
The
machine.
drum.
Yeah.
Ah,
I don't know.
I'm not sure.
Who knows?
No. Let's
The vocals. I was drawn to the vocals in that one. The sound of them and the way it kind of massages the melody. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, like that a lot.
Yeah. That'd be a good one to play on FAWMtalk. We got to remember that.
You got a point there.
As a yeah.
So, in terms of your creative process, you know, how do you guys start a song?
Well, let me tell you, I typically don't start with a bass guitar. Because once I tried and it was a horrible, horrible failure. I don't know. I've been trying to write more lyrics-only songs. But I find that when I just come up with some random-ass idea and just commit to it, then I get the best results. And that's what I did last year with my synthwave album, I wrote down like 100 song titles. Then I picked 14 out of those, and these are the ones, and I'm gonna do these no matter what. And yeah, that's how it started. I just commit to something, and then I start to feel like, okay, what is this song gonna be like, and how it's gonna feel. And with those ones, I just put mic on, and I started to like tap my leg or whatever, and sing melodies, and like and this is gonna go like this. And for the first day, I just did that. I sang all the 14 tracks, and then I started to like encrypt that or decrypt that audio file, and just arrange the melodies and rhythms to actual instrument tracks. So
Do
that's one of my...
you go back and edit much? Because I found because I use the DAW that I use is Ableton. I find it has markers that you can put on the top of the arrangement window, so I can say, this is verse 1, this is the break, this is the chorus, this is the pre-chorus, here's the bridge. And quite often these days I will record the track and have the basic form of it done, and then I come to sing the vocal line and think, I'm crashing the verse into the chorus, so I can just cut down and slide the rest of the song to the right to a certain amount and drop in another 4 bars that gives me a breathing space between the chorus and the verse. Do you ever find yourselves doing that sort of thing?
When I
Or do you just have it all thought out in advance?
Oh god, no. No. It's very much a bang your head against the wall kind of process. So when I do stuff fast, I definitely do a lot of editing. And typically, like with those songs that I did last year, I just I had a very I didn't want to spend too much time on like composing and putting those tracks together, because I wanted to spend like 3 weeks on production and getting the sound as polished as possible. So I just wanted to use the first week to compile the tracks, but during the time it's very much like, this is like this and whatever, and this goes here and this goes here, and just put like these tracks on top of each other, and that's fine. And when you listen to those, because I listen to those tracks like every day. When I went to the city, I just put them in my earbuds on my phone, and I listened to them on the bus ride, and I just think about like, this would be so much better if there was another 4 bars, or that should really be shorter, or that build up should be bigger. So I go back and I just put it there. Yeah, definitely.
So because I know I've seen in Slack chat some people say, oh, I never listen to my stuff when I've done it, but I will, if I'm writing stuff, I will probably listen to it half a dozen times later that evening. Yeah, well, that's... And quite often by the time I've listened to it 6 times, I'm going, yeah, that's totally wrong, and that doesn't fit there, and that mix is completely wrong, and the bass is too loud, and the drums are too loud, and the guitars aren't loud enough, and go back and tweak it. And there's a great temptation to just keep on doing that. You know, I've gone back several times, even on tracks this February, and just gone, no, that's not good enough. I'm going to have to go back and fix that. Well,
that's really what I find difficult about music production, is that you always have to listen to the stuff that you're making. It takes so much time, because I also do a lot of like visual stuff, like art for games and all that sort of thing. So with art, it's so easy. You just look at it, and it takes like half a second, and you know exactly what's wrong with the thing. But with music, if you want to hear, is this production like, is this good enough to be the final production? You have to listen through the whole track every time. If you do a little changes all around the track, you have to listen through it like again. And if it's a 30-minute track, that's like listen to it 6 times, and it's like, well, that's today. I don't know. It takes so much time.
I don't do a lot of the moving around, the editing that way, but sometimes. So it's it also changes. Sometimes it changes how I try to record, like guitar and different things, so that it can be moved around if I need it to. Where you extend it. But I've had some happy accidents. And the song, what's the name of the song? I think it's, on a couple of songs. One, I've got a song called 2054, and it's in 5/4, which I am terrible at playing in 5/4, and it's pretty hard. So I don't do a lot of harder rock songs in FAWM, typically, a couple. But it's pretty hard. And I was playing to a drum loop, and I got, I don't know, partway through, and I messed up. And so I just kept playing, and I was like, okay, this is wrong. And then I just went in and played it again. So I finished the song, and it's basically just a little bit of an intro, verse, chorus, basically. And then I did it again with a mess up, and then I went to record the second guitar, because I love having the one guitar on the left side, and then you change the sound a little bit and do it on the right side. It sounds huge.
Yeah.
It's 2 guitars,
exactly
sounds
the same.
awesome. Yeah. So I go to play the other side, and I did the same thing. I messed up, but I played something different, right? And then eventually I get back around. Okay, I'm going to go back into here. I even paused to measure 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then I go back into it. And and I typically don't like to do that. I like to play through beginning to end of the guitar, and then I'll repeat that. And I'll do, if I've messed up, I'll do, just the second half or the chorus or something, and I'll splice in and comp it or whatever if I have to. But I like having that in because the way I record is not into a DAW. So I actually record on a BR900 and then take the WAV files and put it in the DAW. So I need that framework. Even if it's out of time, I need one take that's pretty good so that I can do other things to it, vocals or whatever. So I go into the DAW, and so I record the bass. I've got an idea of the drums. I throw it in Reaper. I'm sitting here, and I just cut those 2 little sections out and put it at the end. And I move everything back. And it's great. And then when I get done listening to it, I'm like, okay, this isn't too bad. I put the drums to it. I've got the bass in time, do my little edits. And then at the end, I listen to it, and the chords are wrong. Like, they don't play the same chords at the same time. It's just what I was doing to get back to the song. But it sounds cool as hell. So here I am scooting everything back and take that thing. I chop it off to where they both go, and I just shove it right in the middle. And it sounds awesome. It's absolutely wonderful. I've done that a couple of times. So I literally cut it out and then said, no, this has got to go back in. It accidentally, and I didn't hear the first track when I was playing the second track. I was just, start two measures count in and play it through. And I don't always listen to the first guitar take when I play the second guitar take, because sometimes I like those little, the rhythm's just a little bit off. And if it's not glaring, if it's not timing off, if it's playing off just a little bit, that gives you a really wide sound, and sometimes it'll go out. And so I like that magic that sometimes happens. And so I wasn't listening to the first track when I played. I just happened to screw up roughly at the same part, trying to count 5 instead of 4 for the first time in 3 years. Okay. And I absolutely love it. And then I can't sing over it. I can't play over it. I can't do anything. So I put all the synth stuff on. It sounded cool out there. It was wonderful. I didn't like it. I took it off. I started playing guitar on it. So that's Friday. Saturday, I spend 2 hours. I'm playing guitar. Can't do it. And part of it's the 5/4 to get the timing right. And then part of it is that one chord that comes up that doesn't make it. I play pentatonic. That's it. I use a ton of passing tones. And so somebody, you used, Mixolydian there. No, I just hit the wrong note, right? It sounded cool. I have no idea what I did. So So I'm just playing the stuff, and so you put those two things together, and I couldn't do it. So I ended up comping bits and stuff to make it sound halfway decent, and so it's back to a guitar track. So that editing I definitely do sometimes, but it's not often. It's not on a regular basis. But that being said, sometimes I do comp tracks. So if I've gotten a guitar part, I'll take another part and come over here if it's a little bit out of time, or if I've got some buzzing on the acoustic, which right now is happening a lot. I'm going to have to tweak the acoustic so that it's starting to go back out and buzz a little bit. So I'm going to have to tweak it a little bit. And so there's times when if I'm not playing extremely clean, you can hear that. But then I also do a lot of just I've got the little handheld recorder. And I've written the song, I hit play. The first time I play it from beginning to end, and then that's what goes up on FAWM. And if I feel like it after or even during FAWM, sometimes I'll add to it or I'll re-record it for something else. But there's a lot of times where I just have the song I posted yesterday was just this little chord thing I came together, and I got it together and played it all the way through. I think it was the second take is what you hear because I messed up the first one, and that's the way it goes. So for me, it's
the accidental stuff is the best stuff. You
I was having a conversation with Wobby Wobbit earlier about sort of creative ideas that we've been mulling around. And are you familiar with Brian Eno's Oblique Strategies cards? So they're a bit like Yuha's Bard cards, but they're deliberately opaque.
Yeah.
So it's all things like, it'll be, if you get stuck, you pick a card up and it will say something like water or get rid of the most important thing. But the one that I love, and it was apparently the first one he came up with, and TC, it speaks to what you were saying, is honor thy mistake as a hidden intention.
Yeah.
No.
I absolutely love that. So I'm not so precious about messing up these days that I used to be.
They are so great. I mean, the best stuff that I do, the most memorable stuff are the accidents that, like in Satellite, when I listen to it, I always like wait to the part where I accidentally messed up something, and it sounds so great. I would have never. It's something I couldn't have come up with myself or by myself, but it's just, it sounds so nice when there's a little bit of a false tune.
Rakoy say, the good doctor on chat is saying the amount of cool stuff I've accidentally done by dropping a MIDI field onto a wrong instrument is extreme and embarrassing. But yeah, doesn't it make the number of times you do something, in the door that you weren't supposed to do, and something comes out the speakers and you think, that's cool. Who's doing that?
The DAW should have like some sort of randomized button that you just hit and it just mixes everything.
Just mess with what I've just done. Turn it into something else.
That is really funny what you said, TC, about the editing, because in 2014 I did a skirmish song live on YouTube. So the basic gist of my work process there is I recorded guitar, I recorded like 8 bars, and then I was listening through it, and I'm like, okay, that's wrong, like snip, put that part here, and just loop 10 times. And it's so fast on a DAW. It's why wouldn't you do that? Nobody can hear it.
Yeah,
and
I'm
that
not
good old quantize button as well.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm not good enough in the DAW to do that quite yet, but it's amazing. And like you were talking about in that skirmish, I actually collaborated with Amanda West during a skirmish a couple of years ago in the Slack chat, and it was like, okay, here's the skirmish, and I was like, all right. She was like, well, I can do lyric, but I can't really do music. So I was like, well, I'm going to start on some music. You start on a lyric, and then as you get something, give it to me, and I'll tell you if it works or not. And so in Slack, it actually It actually worked out for us to do it that way, where we ended up having a song at the end where we kind of molded the music and back and forth, and I just recorded it. But the cool thing about it was electric guitar, bass, and drums, and a collaboration. It was pretty cool.
Ladies and gentlemen, the magic of technology. It looks like a VHS tape. Perfect.
I'll get it sorted
Yeah.
eventually.
I can still hear you, TC. But
Yeah.
you,
Sounds good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're gonna have a show tomorrow, the same bad time, I think. But I want to thank you, Chris, so much for being in the show. It was so much fun talking
My
about all
pleasure,
this
guys.
progressive stuff, and never get to talk about it enough. Yeah, it was just wonderful.
I had a blast, and thanks for hanging out with me, you guys.
Of course. It's always nice to hang out with cool people. So we have one more. We have one more track here for the into show, and this one is by Callum Carlisle.
Yay!
The song is called "We Thought We Had to Die." So until tomorrow, have a great one, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.
We were young, we were old, we were hot before we were cold. We had riches, but we were poorer than sin. We gave out, so we had to give in. We were black, we were white, in the day and the night. Oh, 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 we had a lot to give. We were up, we were down, in the country and town. Oh, 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 we thought we had to die, so we could live. We were wrong, we were right. We were peaceful, but we had to fight. We were strong, we were weak. We never met, but we were cheek to cheek. We were left, we were right. We were loose until we learned to be tight. We were together, alone, face to face on our mobile phones. We were black, we were white, in the day and the night. Oh, 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 we had a lot to give. We were up, we were down, in the country and town. Oh, 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 we thought we had to die. We were black, we were white, in the day and the night. Oh, 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 we had a lot to give. We were up, we were down, in the country and town. Oh, 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 we thought we had to die, so we could live. And the world was at our feet. All we had to do was walk along the street, flying, dying, so we could live. We were black, we were white, in the day and the night. Oh, 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 we had a lot to give. We were up, we were down, in the country and town. Oh, 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 we really wanted to live. We were black, we were white, in the day and the night. Oh, 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 we had a lot to give. We were up, we were down, in the country and town.